So we just had haircuts here in Baracoa, and I had my first ever single-bladed razor shave, and it was marvelous. My face feels so amazing right now, courtesy of the post-shave facial massage, all for $2. It's putting my usual barber to shame, and man, it feels good. G'day and welcome to Cuba to Rio. I'm Matt Scolle. This is a final episode of our Cuban Odyssey before we move on to glorious Mexico. And in this week we start in Baracoa, right down on the southeast corner of Cuba, and travel well over 2,000 kilometers to the other extreme of the island, to Vinales. So we'll start where our week began, on the slopes of Baracoa's main tourist attraction, El Yunque. That is the whir of a micro generator with hydroelectricity. And we've seen plenty of evidence today of green energy here in Cuba, including a tiny school with about 15 students that had solar panels on its roof. However, I did note that they were at the wrong orientation, facing north instead of south like they should be in the northern hemisphere. But it's been a very strange morning this morning. I went for a morning run on the beach here in Baracoa, and then we just had an ex-member of the Cuban Diplomatic Corps as our taxi driver. And right now we're wandering through the Cuban forest towards El Yunque, which is a 531 metre high forested piece of toast sticking out of the hills behind Baracoa. Well, the Mike survived its first river crossing, the Rio Duaba. This is Baracoa's water supply, but let's see if the same courtesy is extended to the French. Come on, Teo. Vamos, Teo. Opa! Casi. Alright, we're done. That is the sound of cacao being opened, and cacao is one of the main products grown around Baracoa here. And on the way we passed the chocolate factory, which was opened by Che Guevara himself as Minister for Industry back in 1979, I believe it was. The snap and crackle of coconut husks on a Playa Mangalito, where the French and I are enjoying one final night together before we split paths at in an illegal encampment on the beach. We've just had a fantastic fresh fish meal that was caught on the same barrier reef that's 150 meters behind me, which I was snorkeling on today, and it was just brilliant. And saw plenty of lionfish, actually. It's turned out in the last 5 or 7 years the lionfish populations have somehow moved over from the Pacific, and an endemic pest here in the Atlantic and Caribbean. Well, I'd like to immediately correct a fact that I stuffed up there. That chocolate factory that was opened by Che Guevara was in fact opened on the 1st of April 1963. But clearly didn't know that at the time. However, there is an interesting story as to how Che Guevara became the Minister for Industry in Cuba. And before that, he was actually the head of Cuba's central bank. And the way that this occurred was quite demonstrative of the chaos of revolutionary politics. And so the story goes that they were sat around the cabinet table in the late 50s, having triumphed in their revolution, and all of a sudden had a government to run. And so they sat around the table dishing out cabinet positions, and Fidel asked the table, "¿Quién es economista?" And Che Guevara raised his hands. "Who's an economist?" Che Guevara puts up his hands. And so Che Guevara became loaded with the with the role of the head of the central bank in Cuba, and he held that position for I think between 3 and 5 years before he then moved on to being Minister for Industry. Following that, he became a revolutionary again and went off to fight in Angola and later in Bolivia, where he died. But the true fact of that story is that instead of hearing who's an economist, Che Guevara thought Fidel had asked, who's a communist? And so that's why he put his hand up. And so he had a 7-year-long career in the Cuban public service out of a mishearing. And all the Cubans put this down to Che Guevara being a genius and being able to take on any task that's given to him. But really, it was born out of a simple mistake. Anyway, we're moving on now to where the revolution was born, the Sierra Maestra, which is Cuba's largest mountain range. And I'll let myself introduce it. G'day and welcome to Parque Nacional Turquino. This is a wet start to what it will be a rather long and difficult hike to Pico Turquino. But right now, what I'm looking at is some of the most moist and dense jungle that I've seen so far in Cuba, and you can understand why Fidel Castro and his guerrilla army chose these same slopes to house their headquarters. The Comandancia is here in these mountains. So this is history, alive and well, and buried deep inside jungle. We're in the clouds. This is on the way to Pico Turquino, where we're going to make camp in a park station later tonight. We're about 3 k's from the station. And the route has been what they call fangoso, very muddy. And this has been the first time that I've been able to get the microphone out because the rain has been pretty much continuous the whole time. That is the whir of casuarina trees. Sorry for the wind there. We're on Loma del Leon, and this is at 1,180 meters of altitude. And it is now that Pico Turquino has decided to unveil herself. And she is a gigantic mountain, fully forested, with like valleys and everything cascading down her sides. And right now she's just bathed in the most excited clouds. They're just rolling all over her at the moment. And really, we have experienced 4 seasons in one day. There was rain earlier that didn't seem to stop, but now we've got long views across the entire central part of southern Cuba, and it's just fantastic. It's definitely worth remembering that this is the same track used by the guerrillas in their campaign of 1956 when they arrived in the province of Granma, which is just 15 k's to the south of us here, and they decided to bury themselves in these strategic hills. So when you're listening to this, imagine them as the footprints of Fidel, Raul, Che, and all his mates. And it's something else entirely different when that's the case. So we are at the Guardia Joaquin, which is where we're going to be lodged tonight, and it's a little solar-powered ranger station with the most fabulous view of Pico Turquino, which right now is entirely revealed. Like there's not a fleck of cloud on it, and off to her right flank, which is off to her western flank, I can see the Caribbean Sea, which is just like within 15 kilometers as the crow flies from where we are now, which explains the insane weather we've been having today. But right now the sun's out and it's just fantastic. You are listening to the highest podcast in Cuba. We're at 1,972 metres of altitude above sea level, and I can indeed see the sea. There's the Caribbean Sea just down there to the south. And as proof that I am recording this on top of Pico Turquino and not in my hotel room or anything of this nature, that is a bust. It's about 5 times bigger than your average human head, but it is of the one and only Jose Marti. And it was made by Hilma Madera, who, aside from being rather dedicated to the man, was also slightly deluded in that she dragged that bust all the way up here in 1953. And then 3 years later, once Fidel and his buddies arrived, she joined the revolutionary on the slopes of this same mountain. So she is somewhat of a national hero. But yeah, it was a pretty grueling trek. And I'm rewarding myself with some Baracoa chocolate. And yeah, it was a hard day, but I think it was worth it. Dusk, and the forest decided to come alive just as I was bathing out of a bucket. And I'm done for the day. 18 Ks, 3 hours on my own hiking up Turquino there, because the old Netherlands couple that I was walking with didn't make it. So it's just been the end of a fantastic day, and I can't wait to hear what this Sierra Maestra sounds like at dawn tomorrow. So it's 5 in the morning, it's still pitch black, and we've got we did have a veritable dome of the Milky Way over us when we first woke up. But after our breakfast of preserved bread, cheese, and you know how they got imitation cheese? Well, this was imitation Devon, and Devon's pretty awful to begin with, and this was just awful. But anyway, right now it's still dark. The stars are out in part, but rather ominously. There's rain, there's clouds, and the rangers are telling us that it's likely going to rain even harder today than it did yesterday. But, yeah, we'll see. That is the sound of a woodpecker. And I've been waiting for ages to try and capture one of them. They're one of the rarer Pokemon in this forest that I've tried to capture. Woodpeckers, hummingbirds are bloody tough to get. But right now I've had the weirdest sensation for the last 5 minutes, because I can hear rain pounding on my right, but the sun's coming from my left. The reason that is that this whole track has been built along the ridges because there's so much rain here that they don't trust the sides of the mountain to be able to support a track. And so this walk is really tough because you're going up and down the ridges all the time. But it's also making some fantastic rain shadow, boom, right over the top of us. But I'll leave you with that woodpecker and some other bird sounds that I've captured along the way. Sound of a terrible decision. Took the less than half price option to get from Bayamo up to San Havana, and I'm currently in a camion, which is the Cuban way of travelling around Cuba, and and the last 12 hours have been pain and nothing else. I finished Harry Potter at least, but really, it's the worst thing you could have done when you woke up at 5 in the morning, walked down a fucking mountain, eaten one meal, and then hoped you would have got to Vinales by midnight. It's now 10 to 12, and we're still 2 hours from Havana. Awful. That is the sound of puppies. We are in Vinales. The 24 hours plus of travelling is over, and we're just being accosted by 3 very skinny little puppies who are adorable. Dale, dale, dale. A la izquierda. Well, I believe this to be a first. I don't think anyone's done a podcast on top of a horse before. We're in Vinales. I'm with a French, a Belgian couple, and another French girl. And we're on a 6 kilometre plus horse ride to one of the largest lakes in the region. And yeah, it's pretty amazing. Just to give you a scope of how tired I was after that trip in the camion and after doing Pico Turquino, I slept 16 hours last night, which I've never done anything similar in my life, from 3:15 through to 8 o'clock this morning. So, I've got to concentrate on what this bloody horse is doing. My horse's name, by the way, is Coco Loco, but I prefer to call him Caca Liquido because that's what he's been doing. We've been witnessing the strangest little concert this afternoon. A local dog has decided to herd up 2 families of pigs, and the little piglets have got so tired that they've both accosted their mothers and forced them to lay down, even though the dog is still trying to herd the lot of them. And we've got cows in the background just because this is agriculture and tourism clashing together in a ferocious manner. Welcome to La Cueva de los Indios, the cave of the Indians. However, as a Vinales local put it to me, it's not so much the cave of the Indians anymore, but the cave of the tourists. And you can't smoke in here as a tourist, but diesel motors are fine, and we are currently on a boat, just going underneath stalactites and seeing gigantic flowstones on a subterranean river. I might add that the reason that there's a cave here in Vinales is that the entire town is surrounded by limestone karst mountains, just like those in Halong Bay or those in Guilin in China. So it is 6:15 in the morning, a good half hour before the sun rises here in Vinales. But I thought I might come out and record this because this is what everyone mentions when they mention Vinales. From 3 a.m. onwards, this limestone karst valley acts as an echo chamber for all the egotistic roosters out there, and they are going for it from about 3 in the morning. And it's really just an incredible sound. So enjoy. Just as a side note as well, this is the start of my last day in Cuba, so it's a pretty good one so far. So the reason that the cocks are so loud in the middle of the day here is that we just witnessed the end of a cockfight, which is entirely illegal here in Cuba. But we've seen plenty of evidence of an underground industry, not just here in Vinales, but in other parts of Cuba, where they've shaved the bottom halves of the cocks so that they can heal them up better, put them back in the ring later on. So it's a shadowy part of Cuba, but it's one that's there nonetheless. Rightio, well, we're in one of of the iconic buildings that makes Vinales such a fantastic place to visit. What we're in is one of the triangular prisms made of palm fronds, so you might be able to hear that rustling in the background there. But the reason that so many of these buildings are around the place here in Vinales is that they're used to dry this. That's tobacco. And I thought, like, while we're in such an amazing place, the recently cut tobacco is on the lower levels, and then the older tobacco is up high where it's a little hotter, so that it really dries out. And while I've got you here, I thought I might share a few of the little agricultural facts that I've learnt. And it's really where the reach of the Cuban government is strongest, is amongst these primary producers. And so starting with meat, actually, we'll get to tobacco later, but with meat, all animals here in Cuba are branded, and it is in fact illegal for a farmer to kill his own beast, and the state reserves the right to wield lethal power with anything, even a sick horse. And so you can actually find yourself in prison for between 15 and 20 years if you're a Cuban that has killed his own horse. So all live creatures are branded, and the state makes regular little patrols to make sure that they're all still on 4 legs or 2 legs, whatever it be. And I thought that was a pretty amazing overreach. Another thing I've learnt, there's an awful lot of sugarcane. We're eating some of it today. And over 70% of it is mechanized here in Cuba, mostly towards the southern parts of Cuba, where it's nice, big, wide, flat plains. That's mechanized. But that does leave 30% that is done entirely by hand, and that is mainly left to the poorer provinces. Guantanamo, for example, which have poorer soils and are a bit more mountainous, where the machinery can't get into. And finally, back to our tobacco, of which the state takes 90% of any farmer's harvest, 90, which I find an astounding overreach. The farmers then can make cigars or whatnot with the remaining 10%, but really, it's I don't know. It's definitely shaken my faith in the system, the amount of overreach that you see in amongst agricultural producers, because really this is the only part of the economy that they have full control, whereas tourism's taking off and they really are coming to grips with tackling that. But yeah, it's strange that the people that the Cuban government glorify are the people which it seems to wrest most control over, which leaves you with a little bitter taste in the mouth. Now, I must say that it's the tobacco farmers and other primary producers do get reimbursed for their produce, despite the state taking 90% of a tobacco farmers' produce. The tobacco is graded, and they are reimbursed at a particular flat rate, depending on the grade of that tobacco plant. But I did find it a bit off-putting that those that are tied to a physical product like agriculture were those that had the greatest amount of power wielded upon them, whereas those freer industries such as tourism and like, you've got taxi drivers making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. That's probably an overstatement, but they are making way more than the average wage of $20 a month in Cuba, and it's just because that they don't treat in a physical thing. They are free to move around. But anyway, we're back. This is the best part of the podcast, in my opinion, but we're back with our first regulars. This is the Hostelier's Nightmare Trio of Max, Teo, and Mateo. So yeah, this is our final chat before we went out, and it was a little bit rushed, but we touched on some pretty interesting topics before we went out. Well, we've been here once before. Names first, and like if you want to introduce yourself.
So I'm Theo. I am still the same, I think. Even if I have spent a lot of time with this crazy Australian, and well, I don't know. It's a bad thing that he leaves us tomorrow, but I think that I'm gonna be a better man after that. And
I'm Max. I'm the friend of Theo. I think like
and we got a new voice. We picked one up along the road.
Yeah, I'm Cecilia, and I'm also French, like the two guys, and I've been with them like for 2 days, and we're leaving you tomorrow.
I am,
So
yeah,
that's
and I've been
really
learning
sad.
French the entire time that these guys
Yeah.
have been here
French
because,
time.
like, for the first time, Spanish has like dropped off the radar. We haven't spoken a word of Spanish the whole time. But I was thinking the best way to start this would to talk about what happened to us in Manzanillo, or no, Mangalito, because we initially started like at night camping on the beach, just like the three of us, and then for some reason these guys decided to change the plan at about 9:30 at night when we had the fire going and the stars were blazing. And then why'd you go?
And so, no, I don't know how to explain it. I need you should explain it with your own words because it's a real strange story. So I don't know. You need strange words and.
Well, then we can start with where I was then, like, because I woke up in the morning expecting you guys to come back from Baracoa after your night out, and you hadn't. I was all alone on the beach for the whole night, like, just by the fire, listening to my own music on your machines with your passports and everything with me. And then you left me, and then you never came back. But what happened to you? You like.
Well, that's what happened when you're searching for green tea, and so we found an Italian boy who proposed us to go to a bar
On a terrace, yeah, on the roof.
on the terrace and roof, and well, that was a good night. It's so good, and I have sleep.
Fallen asleep, yeah.
I fall asleep on this roof, and I wake up like at 5 a.m. all alone on this roof, and well, I don't know to tell you what have happened next. What have happened, and I have lost Max too. I don't know where it was. I don't know where it was, and we have met him like the next day at midday, something like that.
Yeah, it was a disaster.
It was a disaster. Yes.
By comparison, I had woken up like at the same time, like 6 in the morning to watch the sunrise, and I was all alone, and I watched the sunrise for about 5 minutes. Then it started to rain, and so I had to pack up all the tents and all the hammocks and extra equipment that we had with us, just because I was all alone and I was the only person to do it. And we still managed to leave Max's light at the campsite, which was a stroke of luck. But what have you been doing in Cuba? Where have you been traveling?
I arrived in Cuba, in Santiago de Cuba, so south, El Oriente of the country. I came here alone for 1 month, and I've been traveling since. It's been like 3 weeks. So I started from the south. I lost my credit card on the 3rd day, so it just changed a little bit the way I was going to travel. So I've been really traveling on a low budget. So Cuban mode, Cuban way of doing things. And so it takes time. Hopefully I have time. I have time to lose, so it's quite okay. So I went from Santiago to Baracoa. I was unlucky, and it was raining all the time, but still I had a good time because I was with friends of mine, and it's still a good time when you're with.
And like, how have you found Cuba as a country?
As a country, how can I say that? I wasn't expecting anything, so it's like it's a surprise, of course, but I don't know. It's been a lot of surprise. It's beautiful. I was expecting maybe more. I had bad weather, so I can't say that the beaches are beautiful. I can't say that. But I've seen the nature in a countryside part, and this one is really great.
Yeah, at the moment we're in Vinales, which is like our last stop before we all go our different ways. These boys are off to Costa Rica. Where are you off to next?
I'm off to Mexico.
Mexico. Yes, so
You
you'll
get
be a
to.
week behind me.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm following you. I'm chasing you.
Well, we'll see. So why are we back in Vinales? You guys have already been here once.
Oh well, you know what? We are always smoking anything, so we have been back to Vinales to show it to you first, but to buy cigars, because well, we want to do a business in Costa Rica with those cigars, and
Yeah.
I'm sure that we can do a good thing. I'm sure that we can do a good thing if we don't smoke it, or if we don't let it on the roof.
Yeah.
Well,
So to give them an idea of how much you smoke, how many cigars did you buy last time, and how many cigars are you going to buy this time?
well, we have buy in Vinales. We have buy like
50.
50 cigars, and this time we are gonna buy like, I don't know. Well, tomorrow I don't think that we are gonna buy so much, but before we came back to France, we are going to buy like 200. Tomorrow we are going to buy like cheaper cigars to do that business, because we are not good people, really, and so we are not going to buy good cigars to do business. That's
So you're looking to
for
sell
us.
them to people in Costa Rica when you're over there?
Yeah,
All right, okay.
yeah, really, because that could be a really good business, and we have lost a lot of money here. so we need to change that.
Well, as we're at the end of the trip, then what's something Cuba can improve on?
Improve.
Yeah,
Okay.
make better.
Oh, what we can improve?
It's a huge question.
Except the cars.
Except the cars.
Except the cars, and except the Cubans, and except the no, the way to travel in Cuba, because you can do campism,
Camping, yeah.
free camping, and you can't. I don't know. You always have to do with people. I don't know. We wanted to travel alone. You know, Singia without.
Yeah, without a guide, yeah.
Without a guide, and you always need to, well, not always, but you often need to be with a guide, or to sleep in a Cuban house with Cuban people, and you can go to in the nature just by your own, and stay for a few days, because you're not allowed to do that. So for me, that's a thing that you need to change.
Yeah,
But that's
but
going to
that'll
change.
get easier over time. Like we had a horrible stay at a casa particular here in Vinales for one night, and the owner of this house was just the worst person to us. And we were like, within 5 years, when TripAdvisor arrives here, you're gonna be toast. You're gonna be completely just destroyed by this new business model that you'll have to adopt. What about you, Cecilia?
You just mentioned it. Of course, it's Wi-Fi access for sure.
The internet?
And as a girl traveling alone, really, it's like the behavior of Cuban guys toward a girl. That's really need to be improved.
That's the
It's
big
like-
thing for me as
yeah,
well. Like the
it's
sexism
harassment.
here in Cuba.
Sex harassment all the time, and that's really boring, annoying, and it's pissing me off, really.
Yeah, certainly. And like, I'm glad that we finally have a like female voice on the podcast as well to talk about this, because I reckon that's like something that Cuba's really got to improve before it. I mean, I'm sure it's an issue within all of South America, but here in Cuba there seems to be like a particular sort of brand of sexism and sexual harassment. It's really quite like potent. So I don't know what sort of things have happened to you in the street, because you see like people whispering and at girls all the time.
That's the least thing. I mean, that's nothing. I have this story. It's a little gross. Can I?
That's fine. Yeah.
Can I tell it? I was in Santiago. I was waiting with a friend of mine, another girl. We were waiting to go to a restaurant, and we were just like waiting outside of the restaurant. And there was a guy behind my back, and I just could feel someone. Just I was thinking that this guy was waiting for the restaurant, and then my friend, she just shout, and I just turn around, and he was just jerking off.
Yeah.
You know that, jerking off.
Yeah.
on on the street, and it just went away. Naturally, it just went away. It didn't even feel ashamed, and so we were kind of shocked. And I asked a Cuban girl, a friend of mine, what is this kind of behavior? And she told me, oh, it's normal. It's kind of a disease in Santiago. It's like that. So yeah, this can happen. It can happen anywhere in the world.
Yeah,
okay?
certainly.
But this added to the
It's just a general level.
behavior
Yeah.
is like it's too much.
I don't know. What have you guys seen of that here?
Well, I think that Cuban girls' behavior is really sexual harassment too. Yeah, really. It's horrible because we can't walk in the street. They're always like 10 girls following us. And, well, I know that's horrible. That's horrible. I don't know how to tell to stop. That's impossible. And
No, it's going to take a cultural change. It's going to take a cultural shift. All right. Well, on the flip side, then, and as a final note, what memories are you going to take away from Cuba? What's the big things?
well, maybe a girl. No, I'm gonna bring back cacao, a lot of cacao and cigars, really. But that's really typical, but that's nice.
And Max, what's your favorite memory of Cuba?
The cacao in Baracoa and the cueva in Trinidad.
The Cueva, the club, the cavern in the hill. Yeah. No, I love the Cueva. What was yours?
I'd say I like the laid back attitude of the Cuban people. Yeah, and that's it. Yeah, rum and dancing.
Rum, dancing, and
Rum
Cubans.
and dancing.
Yeah, no, the Cuban people have been really special. What sort of thing makes them different from you've travelled in the Dominican Republic and other places? What makes the Cubans different as a people?
Oh, I'd say that they never rush. They just take their time, and at the end, everything works. It's strange. There's no organization, but there is some kind of organization behind that, and I like that.
Yeah.
That's really.
And no, we talked about that last time on the podcast. Actually, it was just how, like, they seem to have their own network that works underneath everything.
Yeah.
Like the internet's not there, but
No.
then there's the Cuban network beneath everything. And that's
Always.
yeah. And so hopefully, people that listen to this and want to travel in Cuba, they can learn from our example before the internet arrives and changes everything.
Well, I'm not sure that they can learn about our example, but well, really they need to try. They need to try because here you can live really unique experiences, and well, they just need to live it.
Yeah, and also you just need to see that we're not living cliché.
Yeah.
It's different from what one can expect.
Yeah. All the same though, like interestingly, we both were talking at the beginning of the week how we were ready to discover a new country. So, because Cuba's a little tough to get to know, to get to travel around actually. But what are you looking forward to in Costa Rica?
Well, what I want to be improved in Cuba, we are going to search for more nature and for more campism, and I know maybe we can share with people without always having to pay or feel to be just a dollar. That's why we were saying this afternoon. I don't know, just that to be simple and to can travel. I don't know, tranquille. Quietly, peacefully, without just discovering a country without where we can do our own choices with no Cubans to tell us what we need to do always.
What we should be doing. True. Yeah. Well, look, thank you very much for traveling with me. It's been fantastic these last 2 weeks.
Well,
even though Pico Turquino, when I did it on my own, was one of the highlights of the whole trip, coming back to find you in Vinales was the cherry on top. So thank you very much, guys, and thank you, Cecilia, for joining us as well. Alrighty, we're done. Well done. End of the English lesson part 2.
Y hasta el bar.
Sí, yeah. Hasta el bar siempre. All right, so how nice of them to come back. And finally, the podcast has found a tiny drop of gender diversity, which was fantastic. And of course, we touched on a number of topics there that I would have loved to have talked about a little more in greater detail. But I'm sure we'll come across that sort of theme again in South America. But anyway, I was thinking about how we should end this Cuban chapter because I'm on my last morning here, sat on a rocking chair in the sun in Vinales, and the French have all gone. We've said our goodbyes. And I was thinking we might as well do a completely arbitrary long listicle of the best things about Cuba. So right in front of me, I've got 6 things that have made Cuba just completely different. And I think the first of them, number 6, coming in number 6, is Vinales, where I am right now. It's really the tourist mecca of the western part of Cuba, and the reason for that is like there's 2 competing industries here: agriculture and tourism. And I've mentioned this earlier, and neither one really knows which is winning. It's definitely tourism, but the agricultural side of things hasn't let up, and it makes for some interesting moments. There's bullocks in the street stopping tourist buses and everything. It's just I hope it doesn't change. But anyway, make sure you get to Cuba before Vinales loses its agricultural identity. Number 5 then is tourists' sons' internet, which has really been quite a classic thing to watch. Like the amount of complaints that we all share at bars and on buses and the thing about the lack of internet, but it has made them better people. Really, if you make a plan, you have to stick to it, because there's no way of backing out slyly like everyone seems to do these days through Facebook messages. Oh, I'm not feeling great, I'm not coming, and then boom, a whole event can fall apart. But in Cuba, I made plans with people to meet up with 36 hours in advance, and they were there at 8 o'clock on the steps where we agreed to meet. And it's really nice that once you remove the stocks of the internet, people actually are dependable, and that was amazing. At number 4, El Morro de Santiago, that fantastic fort with that fantastic cannon shot, courtesy of our French friends. But really, that night was just unparalleled, with that stunning sunset going down right down the southern coast of Cuba, with the Sierra Maestra on the right, and this just like gigantic ocean flooded with bright red light. But once I get the photos up, you might see why. At number 3, the bit I did by myself, really, Pico Turquino. It was just amazing, and the fact that I got to spend those last 4 hours or 3 hours of hiking on my own as the highest person in Cuba was just, it symbolized everything I wanted out of this trip. It was a personal goal that I did, and I made some good podcasts out of it as well. So yeah, Pico Turquino is something else, but it is a bloody tough hike. At number 2, Trinidad. That fantastic town that we got to after Havana. It was really one of a kind. It had everything, like the beautiful cobblestone streets, great colonial architecture, and the tourism industry there was at its best in all of Cuba. Everything was lubricated. There were taxis, there were bikes to rent. It just made getting around so easy, and getting to know the place just that much easier. And really, when you're a tourist, you're looking for the easiest way to do things, and Trinidad just did that in the nicest way possible. And then finally, at number 1, not sure if we're going to have such a long listicle for Mexico, we'll see. At number 1, the Cuban people. And we've already discussed this multiple times on the podcast, just that network of connections that they have through family and friends makes them one of a kind. But not only that, but just their deep knowledge of the world in which they live, and the way that it will affect them, and the way they think it will affect them in the future, especially with all the changes that are going to come to this small Caribbean island nation. So there's a lot to think about, but I think of all of that, like someone said it before, I'm not sure if it was on the podcast, but the strength of the Cuban people will see it through whatever changes the West will bring to it. And I think that's definitely a good thing. So that's it for this little podcast. Make sure you stay in contact on Facebook at Cuba to Rio. And if you've got any suggestions and whatnot for me, send that through to cubatorio@gmail.com. And I've been enjoying reading all your messages that people have sent to me. And if you like the podcast, make sure you leave a review on iTunes, and also tell a friend. If you know one person that you reckon that would enjoy this podcast, then if everyone does that, this thing doubles in size. It's not like I'm looking for great numbers, but yeah, we could do with a few more. Everyone could do it with a few more. Anyway, but thank you, and thank you to Cuba for this wonderful part of my trip. And next, we're off to Mexico. Ciao.